Let's try this again. Greetings. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Let me know if the audio is coming through this time. Excellent. Today we are continuing our book study on the mystical Qabalah written by the wonderful Dion Fortune. Tonight's chapter, chapter 18, will be about the sphere of Chesed, also known as the sphere of Jupiter. The number 4 is the name of the game. There will be many themes and symbols associated with Jupiter, 4, and ruling power. As you can see by the 4th major arcana, the Emperor card, he sits on the throne. We remember that we learned about the throne last time, Bina, the springboard from which power can emerge. He's holding the staff. He's also holding an orb with a cross above it. We'll learn about that symbol. And remember also, not only does the throne represent Bina, but also the color red in the king scale Absolute tree. So we're going to get into this. We're going to get into many more things. This book is very insightful, very deep. So I hope that you've brought your note-taking utensils, because it's time to take some notes and observe. Let's get into it. Peace and greetings. Welcome to all my friends, my favorite people in the universe. I'm glad to have you here as we embark upon this journey. Peace, peace, Fat Tony. Peace, peace. Cosmic Traveler, peace and greetings. Wraith636, peace, peace, welcome, welcome. Useless Familiar, peace and greetings. I'm glad that you're finding value in these videos. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and flip this camera onto something that is almost equally as beautiful. Jai Jago Paul, peace, peace. I did get your message. Just give me a moment to respond to you. But I did get your message. Well, you know it's serious when I'm teaching Qabalah in my dreams. It's so funny. Um, some girl asked a question, and I'm giving her the answer, and I'm literally talking out loud. So like I wake myself up as I'm teaching her Kabbalistic principles about Hesed and Bina. And even though I woke up, I kept going. I was talking to myself. But yeah, you know it's getting serious, man. You know it's getting serious when it's infiltrating the dreams. Hey, that shows me that I can do this shit even when I'm unconscious, right? Cosmic Travelers' Bina was a banger. I see why it's a lot of people's favorite chapter. Very deep indeed. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So Chesed. Chesed. Do you want to know what the girl asked me in the dream? Or you just want to jump straight to the chapter? It's up to you. Jai Jago Paul says, can we eat meat diet going higher in the consciousness? You can, right? Because remember what was said, it's not anything that you do that makes you holy or higher conscious. However, the material plane is something to take into consideration, right? Um, Meat has certain effects on the body, and not eating meat has certain effects on the body. So remember that the body is a vehicle. And if you want your vehicle to, say, travel long distance, the first thing you're going to do is get your oil changed, check all your fluids, check the tires, make sure it's in a certain condition to endure. Um, Part of the endurance that I've learned when it comes to the whole higher planes stuff is to reduce and or eliminate eating of flesh. Not because it's morally right or morally wrong, but it has certain effects on the vehicle that may or may not cause the trip to, you know, be more stressful on the body. All right, so yeah, just real quick. I don't want to take too much time because it's already kind of late. But essentially, in this dream, apparently there was like this superhero movie coming out that represented like black women as this hero, right? And everyone was looking forward to it. Then all of a sudden, the movie theaters and producers were like, "Well, we're not actually going to put this out until another year." So this girl in class was like, "Well, what about this movie? You know, we were waiting on it, and this was going to be empowering, but now they canceled it. What are we going to do?" And essentially, my answer was something to the effect of, "Make your own." And everybody in the class was like, "That's not a sufficient answer." So I explained a little bit more. Think about what's happening with this movie, right? You've got a symbol. It's a symbol, and you're building up anticipation. You're building up this anticipation of wanting to see something be portrayed on the screen. It's going to affect your subconscious mind. Remember, we talked about symbols. Seeing this person and putting yourself in their shoes, like, yeah, here's the hero. They look like me, and they're doing things that I wish that I could do, and that empowers me. That gives me strength. That makes me feel like I'm a superhero. Well, why do you have to wait on somebody else to feed you when you can take a symbol from reality or make a symbol, right? And pour your own meaning into it and build up anticipation as you do it, and then release the anticipation as you indulge and enjoy it. And then allow that symbol to play off in the back of your head and continue to feed you, strengthen you, and empower you. That's what we do anyways, right? When you say, "Oh, I'm Darth Vader. Oh, I'm Spider-Man. I'm Captain America. I'm Black Panther." It's the same thing, right? The new Dragon Ball game came out, or whatever. We build up this anticipation for this release, and they call it a release, right? When it comes out and it's released. What we're talking about is force inside of form. We're using these forms to capture the force, and we identify with it, building a subconscious linkage, allowing it to fuel us. Does that make sense? This is what we do all the time. This is what magic is. That's what a ritual is, right? You identify a certain cosmic force, you give it a form, you identify with it, you build up the anticipation. It's just like sex, right? You build up the anticipation, you reach the climax point, and you think about it later on throughout the day. It's literally an up and a down. It's a Rajas, Sattva, Tamas. Anyways, did you catch the game last night? Is it still hot out there? Have you tried the lasagna? It's my favorite. I like that, Benjamin 37. Saturn and Jupiter colliding together. They did that a few years ago. They became conjunct around this time, just a few years ago, the 21st. People got very excited. There's going to be another alignment here in a month, exactly a month. So, I wonder what forces that symbol holds for us. Void Stranger, peace, peace. Happened almost a year ago and still lives in the back of my mind. I wonder if it was around the same time. All right, so let's do this. Chapter 18, Chesed, the fourth Sephirah. Title, Chesed, mercy. Magical image, a mighty crowned and throned king. A lot like this. A mighty crowned and throned king. Situation on the tree. In the center of the pillar of mercy. Um, let's see. Hold on for just a quick second, please. And we're back. And we're back. I know nothing. Peace, peace. Patchwork, peace, and good evening. Spiral Anomaly 4, peace. Sly, peace. It's been a while. Okay, so magical image, mighty crowned enthroned king. Situation on the tree, it's in the center of the pillar of mercy. Yet erratic text. The fourth path is called the cohesive or receptive intelligence because it contains all the holy powers, and from it emanate all the spiritual virtues with the most exalted essences. They emanate one from another by virtue of the primordial emanation, the highest crown, Kether. Titles given to Chesed: Gijula, love, majesty. Interesting, right? God name El. El. How many of you have heard that God's name was El? So it's specifically referring to Chesed. Archangel is Zadkiel, benevolence of God. Order of angels, the Hashmalim, the brilliant ones. Shining white angels that you can barely even see. J. Baldtail, peace and greetings. Peace and greetings. Much love, my friend. The mundane chakra is Sedek, Jupiter, kind of like Melchizedek. Spiritual experience, the vision of love, benevolence, love. The virtue is obedience, But check this out: the vice is bigotry, hypocrisy, gluttony, tyranny. Correspondence in the microcosm is, of course, the left arm. Now, this is important if you didn't notice already. So, the left arm is the correspondence. Take a look at the tree of life right now and look at where Chesed is. Chesed's over here on the right pillar, right? So, how does it represent the left arm, right? You see the head, the body, the right pillar, but this is the left arm. And also, this is the left side of the face, the right side of the face, right? How many of you have entered into the mysteries? Zero, peace, peace. Good to see you always, my friend. Look, I'm not trying to take my gnosis's phrase, but I'm standing on principle here. And much respect to everybody who's standing on principle. Because this is not a world that is conducive for standing on principle. This is a world conducive for people being scumbags and slime balls. So to stand on principle, it's easy in class, but it's difficult in session. So I appreciate and I have respect for all of you who do stand on principle. This it's been a difficult holiday season for a lot of people, but you're doing your best. I'm proud of you. Tough times don't last, but tough people do. Everything comes around and goes around in its cycles. I've been thinking a lot about that last chapter, man. Y'all got to really think about what she was saying, and I'm saying this because this is going to be helpful to you. Remember what she was saying in the last chapter about Bina, how Hakma proceeds to push out more and more energy, and it spirals and it spirals and it builds a form. That's what Bina is, and that form is solid and it's structured. And Hakma keeps pouring into it, and in an essence, it's getting tighter and tighter like a spiral, coiling around that spirit essence of Hakma until it completely constricts it and it crushes it. But see, the thing is, the soul cannot be destroyed. So what happens instead is that the structure that was built by Bina is actually destroyed. It falls apart completely. But it doesn't end there because Hakma continues to pour in. And over time, a new structure is created. And she said that you can see this pattern happening in the government and in the world and culture. You can even see it happening in your daily life or your yearly life. Like, do y'all remember when she talked about that? It was actually right in the beginning. And in my last meditation, I really sat here and I went through all the major peaks and falls of my life. Like, I really saw how I was building up, building up, building up, and things fell apart, right? And then that was it. In that falling apart was the seed for the next phase of me building up, building up, building up. Then I crashed again. And I'd build up and I'd crash, and I'd see this pattern happening in my life, and I'd watch it through Kabbalistic eyes, right? I began seeing how I actually built a faulty structure. And when it became too much, it fell apart. And I noticed that as I got older and as I got wiser, the fall hurt less, right? And in fact, in the beginning, the fall was entirely my fault for just being a dumbass. But lately, the crashes and the falls come from external circumstances, right? And again, it hurts less. I don't identify with it. And I learn throughout the whole thing on how to build a better structure. So if you can kind of look at life in that way, it doesn't seem so fatalistic, right? Even if you've made mistakes and you've done things that you're embarrassed of, ashamed of, humiliated about, those things don't define you. It's all part of this growth process. It's all about building and destroying. In the past, you've built some structures that were very faulty and unstable. Now you know better. So pay attention, brick by brick, right? That's what they say. You're building this algorithm brick by brick. And I don't just mean on the internet. Your life is an algorithm. The same way that when you turn on your phone and you only really see the stuff you care about, same thing happens with what's called your reticular activation system. You really only pay attention to the things you care about. But that's your algorithm, and you build it brick by brick. So take control, take accountability, right? We don't have time to be depressed about it, to cry over spilled milk. Just pay attention to what you're building. And if it's falling apart right now, if it's being destroyed right now, that's a good thing because you're getting rid of what didn't work, and you have the chance to build back better. No Biden. No Biden. Build back better. No Biden. All Bina. All right. So let me know if you heard what I said. Let me know if you heard what I said. Um. Yeah, I thought that would be something that was. Anyways, let's keep it moving. Use is familiar. That's a good question. He says, by vice, do they mean the clip off correspondences? Not exactly. I mean, yeah, you can say that technically, but not exactly. When she's talking about the vice, she's talking about when the virtue is applied out of context, when it's no longer useful or appropriate, it manifests as the vice. So obedience, right? When it is out of context, when it is no longer useful and appropriate, it can come off as tyranny, right? It can come off as bigotry, racism, because you're adhering to something that at once served yourself and the people, but now it only harms. I know nothing says, is there a reason the only negative card above the abyss is Three of Swords, sorrow? Yeah, but I wouldn't call it negative in the sense of bad, right? Um, the three is the feminine, the swords is masculine. Sorrow, what we're talking about here is the sorrow of spirit getting encapsulated into form. It must die. She said that a great symbol to look at concerning that card is Mother Mary after they pulled Christ off the cross, right? He came, he did his thing, and he had to die, just like we all have to die. That's the vision of sorrow. Knowing that even though there's a beauty in life, there is a heartbreak in knowing that death must come. And that's one of the things about the three, about the Bina. The moment that life enters, it is doomed to death. Go back just a few more pages if you have this book. She explains it. Just a few more pages before this. Benjamin 3:7 says it's all in the cycles we leave and choose to build, correct? Right. Even if it is happening subconsciously, but the older and wiser you get, you become more conscious. That's part of what I was saying. As you're young, you're building and building your patterns subconsciously. You're just living and doing your thing. But as you get older and you pay more attention, you start to see how you're building your life. And if you start paying attention, that means you can be more intentional, more useful and appropriate with it, more solid and stable. All right, all right. Sunshine Chick, always great to see you. Jai Jagopal says, Master Travis, how do you block energy of people close to bring it up or thinking mentally of it? Well, I have a saying that's called maintain your frame, right? Everybody has a frame of reality that they process their lives through. Um, you can hold on to yours, or you can accept someone else's. My recommendation is, regardless of what you see and hear, if it doesn't line up with your frame of reality, you can choose to reject it. And by reject it, what I mean is simply ignore it and focus on what you're doing, what you're thinking. You can't afford to spend any thought power on someone else's frame of life that doesn't fit with yours, that doesn't serve yours. And that's not, I'm not saying be delusional. I'm saying if you have an opinion about how things are based on your experience, and somebody else has another one that's clearly hurting you, you do not have to accept theirs. I don't care whose it is. It could be your parents, it could be your partner. You don't have to accept someone else's frame. Hold on to yours. Wraith636 says, Brother Travis, would you say to stand on principle requires discipline, such as the guidance of the left hand path of occultism? It does, right? Absolutely. Because to choose discipline is to choose in favor of your future self, as opposed to in favor of your pleasures. That's hard. That's hard, especially if you're out of practice. And this is where the Gibara sword comes in. This is where Saturn, the opposer, the tester, comes in. This is where Hod, the study, the analyst, the strategist, comes in. So yeah, that's the left-hand path for sure. All right. So let me get back to this now. Let me get back to this, because we can sit here and have a, usually Thursdays I just go off and do a lecture, but I thought it would be great to actually read again, because this is really, really good. Mm. Kind of moody, so I was gonna bail. Then it clicked why you did this tonight. It would be foolish to leave. Just like I do, man. It all happens the way it's supposed to. There are certain vibes and currents of energy, and I think that many of us feel the same way around the same times. WT, peace and greetings. Peace and greetings. Okay, here we are. Here we are. So the symbols of Chesed, the solid figure, the tetrahedron, the pyramid, the equal armed cross, right? Because we're talking about pyramid, four-sided pyramid specifically. So that would be like the three sides and the one bottom. The orb, the wand, the scepter, the crook. So as you can see here, you got the orb, you got that wand, that scepter, you got the throne. In some versions of this card, you'll see the pyramid instead of the orb. So let's talk about these tarot cards. The four fours, the four of wands, talking about perfected work, and what a wonderful card that is, perfected work. The four of cups, which represents pleasure. The four of swords, which represents rest from strife. The four of pentacles, earthly power. The color in Atziluth is deep violet. The color in Bria is blue. The color in Yetzirah is deep purple. The color of Asaya for this, is deep azure flecked with yellow. Peace, peace, I win. Kimby, greetings. Okay, now, one. Between the three supernals and the next pair of balancing Sephiroth upon the tree, there is a great gulf fixed which is called by mystics the Abyss. Right? We're talking about the Abyss now. So between the three supernals and the next pair of balancing Sephiroth upon the tree, there is a great gulf fixed which is called by mystics the Abyss. All of us here knows what that looks like at this point. The next six Sephiroth, Chesed, Geburah, Tifereth, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod constitute what Kabbalists call the microprosopos, the lesser countenance, Adam Kadmon, the king. The queen, the bride of the king, is Malkuth, the physical plane. We have then the father, Kether, the king, and the bride. And in this configuration of the tree, there is profound symbolism and great practical importance in both philosophy and magic. Now remember, practical means it has an effect on your health, on your wealth, on your relationships, right? On your mental, emotional states. So understanding this trinity, right? The father, the king, and the bride. In this configuration of the tree, there is profound symbolism and great practical importance in both philosophy and magic. Two, the abyss, the gulf fixed between the macroprosopos and the microprosopos, marks a demarcation in the nature of being and the type of existence prevailing upon the two levels. So that abyss is literally marking the difference between two specific dimensions. Two specific dimensions. The upper triad is radically different from the lower tree. Radically different. It is in the abyss that Doth, the invisible Sephiroth, has its station. And it might aptly be named the Sephiroth of becoming. It is also called understanding, which might be further interpreted as perception, apprehension, consciousness. So she's talking about Doth. This might be the first time that she's mentioned Doth. Doth presides over the abyss. You can think of the abyss as this eternal expanse of void. And there's just like this little lighthouse, this little checkpoint. And if you never find that checkpoint, you will never escape the abyss. You have to get to that checkpoint in order to cross over into the upper triad, which we read about previously, Kether, Hakma, and Bina. Most everything gets lost in the abyss. So what else did she say about Doth? It might be called understanding, which might be further interpreted as perception, apprehension, even consciousness. Three, these two types of existence, macroprosopos and microprosopos, serve to indicate the potential and the actual. That is key. I know I keep saying a lot of these things are important, but look, this is super, super important to remember across the board. Where I said that the abyss separates the upper triad from the lower triad or the lower tree, and they are radically different states of existence. Well, you can think of the upper triad as the potential reality and the lower tree as the actual reality. In other words, what's happening under the abyss is it's kind of it's not set in stone, but it's already rolling out. It's underway. So not just the physical life that we have, but the thoughts and ideas and feelings and daydreams and emotions and all the things that we can perceive of, all this is already taking place. On the upper triad, it's not taking place. It's a potentiality. So to get really weird with it, we talk about these multiverses and this infinite different dimensions. Who knows how many different uh, trees are underneath Bina? All of them would be contained in Bina. We might live in a completely specific tree, but still it would be attached to Bina and the same Kether. So you see, the upper triad doesn't change, but the lower triad, the lower tree is what's already set in motion. So the two types of existence, macroprosopus and microprosopus, serve to indicate the potential and the actual. Actual manifestation, as our finite minds can conceive it, begins with microprosopus. And the first aspect of microprosopus to come into being is chesed, the fourth sephirah. The fourth sephirah, situated immediately below Chakma, the Father, in the Pillar of Mercy, of which it is the central sephirah. It is balanced across the tree by Geburah, severity, and this pair, Geburah and Gijulah, form the power and the glory. You've heard that phrase before. For thou art the kingdom, the power, and the glory. Or of the final invocation of the Lord's Prayer, the kingdom being, of course, Malkuth. So for thou art the kingdom, the power, and the glory, we're talking about Malkuth, Geburah, and Chesed. Which came first, the Qabalah or the Bible? Right, and don't forget Amen, Amen, right? Don't forget, that's Kether. That's another good thing to point out. I Know Nothing says, and as Dion said, Bina is the root, right? The root of which Malkuth is the fruit. So who's to say there aren't other branches? And even though that's not really useful or appropriate, it's interesting to think about. But that's part of what's in the abyss. Um, in my experimentation and correspondence with others, when doing work in Doth, when attempting to like explore Doth, what you're gonna find potentially is powerful information, but it has to do with other planes of existence, with other realities that don't even touch this one. In other words, you could learn all the secrets about some random multiverse, but you can't do anything with it here. I mean, unless maybe you're a movie producer or a comic book writer, but even still, the stuff is so, it can be so bizarre that you can't do anything with it. Anyone who's ever, tripped on acid or a really strong mushroom trip or anything like that, you know what I'm talking about. You'll get so deep and you'll find all this powerful information, but by the time you come back here, there's literally nothing you can do with it. Like you can't even talk about it. You can't even remember it, for crying out loud. This is the kind of stuff that's in the abyss. And as you can see, this is why the clip off is easily reached through the abyss. Because technically, most all of that information that can't be used here is a part of the clip off. It can't be used, no longer useful or appropriate in this existence whatsoever, right? You could live an entire lifetime as some type of slug species who saved the universe from this cat species. And they might have taught you brilliant lessons and all these different magical abilities and all this stuff, but you're not a slug person when you come back, so you can't do anything with any of that. That's the type of thing that I found in the abyss. I don't know what you'll find. Sage Page, welcome back. Good to see you again. Gilly Suit 33, peace. Don Tree, peace, peace. Impossible Offers, peace and greetings. 4. As we have already seen, we can learn much from the position of a Sephirah in the pattern of the tree, right? We can learn much from the position of a Sephirah in the pattern of the tree. And from the position of Chesed on the Pillar of Mercy, we see that it is Chakma upon a lower arc. It is emanated by Binah, a passive Sephirah, and emanates Geburah, a catabolic Sephirah, whose mundane chakra is Mars, with all his warlike symbolism, who is Saturn upon a lower arc. 5. From these things we can learn a great deal about Chesed. It is the loving Father, the protector, the preserver. Now, out of the trinity of Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma, who is the preserver? And by the way, we are talking about it. We just got finished reading about a Trinity, Kether, Bina, and Hakma. And before the year is out, we will finish up this Trinity, which is Geberah, Gijla, and Tifereth, right? This is the Trinity that we're currently working on, starting with, of course, Chesed. So it is the loving Father, the protector and preserver, just as Hakma is the all-begetter. It continues the work of Hakma, organizing and preserving that which the All-Father has begotten. It balances with mercy the severity of Geburah. It is anabolic or upbuilding, in contradistinction to the catabolism or downbreaking of Geburah. You're going to see this a lot in this text. You're going to see the catabolic and the anabolic. And basically, whenever you see anabolic, she's talking about upbuilding. When she's talking about catabolic, she's talking about downbreaking. And when she says anabolic, she's usually talking about chesed. When she says catabolic, she's usually talking about Geburah. Check. Chickity check. Speaking of Geburah, gotta get my moderator sword out real quick. I see somebody that's not gonna be here for long. Do you wanna go to war with a soldier? No limit, true nigga. I thought I told you. Do you wanna go to war with a soldier? No limit, true nigga. I thought I told you. Yeah, got your dumb ass. All right, let's continue. 6. These two aspects are very well expressed in the magical images assigned to these two Sephirah. These magical images are both kings, that of Chesed as a king on his throne, and that of Geburah, a king in his chariot. In other words, the rulers of the kingdom in peace and war, the one a lawgiver and the other a warrior. We got that? The rulers of the kingdom in peace and war. So all kingdoms throughout time have had peacetime and wartime. And the one who sits in power has to make a different set of decisions, right? Right now, we're talking about the king who's making decisions during peace. He's chilling. He's chilling. 7. The analogy of physiology gives us a clear understanding of the significance of these two sephirah. Metabolism consists of anabolism, or the ingesting and assimilating of food, and its building up into tissue, and catabolism, or the breaking down of tissue in active work and the output of energy. The byproducts of catabolism are the fatigue poisons, which have to be eliminated from the blood by rest. The life process is an everlasting upbuilding and downbreaking. And didn't we talk about that with Chokmah and Bina? An everlasting upbuilding and downbreaking. And Geburah and Gijula, another name for Hesed, represents these two processes in the macrocosm. So also remember what she said. Force as Chokmah and form as Bina. Force being the explosion and form being the actual engine structure. And she said that Chesed and Geburah are going to be the pistons pumping up and down, keeping the machine running. So that's the difference here. That's the difference here. Chesed would be the explosive force that makes the engine go. Bina would be the actual engine structure itself, the form. Chesed would be the piston pumping up. Geburah would be the piston pumping down, so that it continues to cycle up, down, up, down. And of course, Tifereth would be that central part that keeps the up and down going balanced. Give me just a sec. I finished my coffee early. I'm gonna go get some creamer, and I'm gonna be right back. This will not take long at all. Hazelnut. Sounds good. All right, let's continue. Mysteries Ascent. Peace. Nice icon you got there. Okay, so we were talking about the engine and the piston. Jai Jagopal says, if you want some excellent high vibration music to listen, type Dr. B Serious music on YouTube. Dr. B Serious, I haven't heard of him. Okay. All right, 8. Said, being the first Sephirah of Microprosopus, or the manifested universe, represents the formulation of the archetypal idea, right? The formulation of the archetypal idea, the concretion of the abstract. When the abstract principle that forms the root of some new activity is formulating in our minds, we are operating in the sphere of chesed. So did you hear that? For everyone that likes to ask, how do I know if I'm operating in Yesod? How do I know if I'm operating in Tifereth? Well, look, she told you right here. When the abstract principle that forms the root of some new activity is formulating in our minds, we are operating in the sphere of chesed. In other words, um, let's say that you come up with this idea for a song, right? Well, that idea didn't just appear in your head. There was a root to that idea. There was a seed planted. There was something that sparked that, right? So if you've ever written music before, you know it's a process to really unfold that seed. Or if you're any other type of artist, before you actually create the thing, it it's somewhere else, and you kind of grab it and you pull it down and you unpack it and you unfold it. That pulling down and unpacking, that's when you're operating in the sphere of chesed, right? Um, before having an idea to make a video, I might get some kind of spark and I slowly develop it and unfold it. If you have an idea for an app or a business idea or anything that is created, right? Because we don't actually create anything, we pull it down. We pull the energy down and give it a form. We learned about this in the previous chapter. Anything that we create, anything that we do, anything, right? By the time we've given it a form, we've already brought it down the planes. But just before we give it a form, we have grabbed the force and we slowly give it shape. We slowly take it from the abstract and start to concrete it. And okay, first of all, do you understand what I'm saying by that? She said, when the abstract principle that forms the root of some new activity is formulating in our minds, we are operating in the sphere of chesed. Boom. What I'm also saying here is this is what's happening with psychic ability as well. It isn't simply just, touching your temples and, oh, I can see the future. Before anything happens, it's trickling down the tree. It's coming down these planes. Before it unfolds into some concrete form, it's first abstract. And what you do as far as training your psychic senses or developing your psychic senses is you learn how to navigate in that space of the abstract. You learn how to navigate in that space of the abstract, and you start to be able to track the seed before it blossoms. It seems weird because most people only operate in a fully grown garden where things are already born and about to decay. But comparing it to a garden, the psychics and occultists of the world would be gardeners, right? And we're able to track and channel and identify these things before they take shape. Let me know if that's clear. I think that was a pretty damn good explanation, but it doesn't matter unless you understand what I'm saying. Peace, Andy Johnston. Nandy Johnston says, Hetepu, happy Kwanzaa to those that honor this week as such. The subtle realms, peace, peace, the divine spark of imagination. Absolutely. Nandy Johnson says, cosmic downloads. Oh, yeah. Zero says, this info is golden, really beautiful, useful, and appropriate. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And this is why I do it. Sage Page says, you should be on the Black Magic 363 show. Beyond grateful for your content. I agree, but I mean, you guys would have to talk to them. I think for some reason, I might not be on that show ever. But hey, who knows? I met him in person once at an event, and just so happens that there was also a guy who was a fan of my channel, and he's like, "Yo, this is Travis Magus, man. You gotta have him on your show, man. You gotta have him." And he's like, "Yeah. I'll check him out. Check him out." But that was that was a while ago. Anyways, Nick Thornis says Jesus is pretty cool. Indeed, we'll talk about Jesus, or I should say Tifereth, uh, probably probably Tuesday. So come back Tuesday. We'll talk all about Jesus. But before we get to Jesus, we've got to get through Chesed and Geburah. All right, good to go. Let's continue. The abstract into the concrete. Good coffee. So where were we? Okay, the abstract into the concrete. Right. So when the abstract principle that forms the root of some new activity is formulating in our minds, we are operating in the sphere of Chesed. So that's when. Let an example serve to make this clear. Supposing an explorer is looking out from a mountain over a newly discovered country and sees that the inland plains lying behind the coastal ranges are fertile, and that a river flows through these plains and makes its way to the sea through a gap in the mountain chain. He thinks he thinks of the agricultural wealth of the plains, transport down the river, and harbor or on the estuary. What's the estuary? Estuary. I don't think I know what that word is, but I can deduce that it has something to do with being on the harbor of the river. Anyways, he's looking at this fertile land, right? It's undeveloped, but in his mind's eye, he's seeing, right, the agriculture, what can happen with the river, what can be developed, what can be built. For he knows that the scour of the river will have made a channel by which ships can come in. In his mind's eye, he sees the wharfs and the warehouses, the stores and the dwellings. He wonders whether the mountains contain minerals and pictures a railway line alongside the river and branch lines up the valleys. He sees the colonists coming in. He sees the colonizers coming in. And the need for a church, a hospital, a gaol, and the ubiquitous saloon. His imagination maps out the main street of the township, and he determines to stake corner lots that he may prosper with the prosperity of the new settlement. All this he sees while virgin forest covers the coastal belt and blocks the mountain passes. But because he knows that the plains are fertile and that the river has come through the mountains, he sees in terms of first principles all the development that follows. While his mind is working thus, he is functioning in the sphere of Chesed, whether he knows it or not. And all those who can also function in terms of Chesed and think ahead as he does, seeing the thing that must arise from given causes long before the first line is drawn on the plan or the very first brick is laid in the trench, are able to possess themselves of the valuable land where the wharfs must be built and the main street must run. I love that example. Basically, she's talking about how this explorer finds this new territory, right? He discovers some new land. We know how that goes. And he sees nothing but trees and a river and mountains. But in his mind's eye, he can already picture the town being developed and the stores and the saloon and, what type of industry. Maybe they'll do lumber stuff. Maybe they'll do mining. He sees it all. He even sees which areas he's going to take for himself so he can continue to make money. And that is the definition of working in the Chesed sphere. Oh, thank you so much, Kimby. Kimby says, I was curious. An estuary is a coastal body of water where fresh river water mixes with salty ocean water. Thank you. Thank you. So look, let me read this again, this part at least. She said, all those who can also function in terms of chesed and think ahead as he does, seeing the thing that must arise from given causes long before the first line is drawn. Now you can understand why I say this is also what's happening with psychic ability. Those who are able to work with psychic ability intentionally, you're working on this level as well. You're able to see these things before they're fully uh, concrete, while they're still abstract. But then again, it's not just guessing, it's being able to sense this subtle information. Let's continue. 9. All the creative work of the world is done thus, by minds working in terms of Chesed, the king, seated upon his throne, holding the scepter and orb, ruling and guiding his people. This is why this is the fourth tarot major arcana. And do you see the mountains behind him and the river? 10. By contrast with this, we observe the people whose minds cannot function above the level of Malkuth. All right, now we're talking about everybody else that you know. By contrast with this, we observe the people whose minds cannot function above the level of Malkuth, the bride of the king. They are the folk who cannot see the wood for the trees. They think in, look, they cannot see the wood for the trees. In other words, when they see a tree, they don't see the wood that builds houses or paper and pencils or the other things that wood builds. All they see is a tree. Their mind doesn't go past what's directly in front of their eyes. They think in terms of detail, lacking any synthetic principle. Their logic is never able to reach back to origins, but is always materialistic. They are never able to discern subtle causes and are the victims of what they call the caprices of chance. They are unable to discern subtle conditions, nor can they work out the line that primary impulses will follow, or can be made to follow when these are coming down or being brought down into manifestation. Again, after reading this, I believe at this part she's talking about psychic ability. Mayat Mystic, peace and welcome. Sage Page says, I can see you killing it on that show. I would love to interview you myself. Well, I'm open to interviews. So, I mean, yeah, hit me up on Instagram or something like that. We can certainly do it. Or send me an episode of your show so I can watch it and see what kind of thing you do. Okay, so let's continue. The caprices of chance. They are unable to discern subtle conditions, nor can they work out the line that primary impulses will follow or can be made to follow. That's another thing. If you're pulling down from the abstract, it's not definite yet, which means it can still be manipulated a bit, right? So nor can they work out the line that primary impulses will follow or can be made to follow when these things are coming down or being brought down into manifestation. 11. The occultist who does not possess the initiation of Chesed will be limited in his function to the sphere of Yesod. You see that? So the occultist who does not possess the initiation of Chesed will be limited in his function to the sphere of Yesod, the plane of Maya, illusion. For him, the astral images reflected in the magic mirror of the subconscious will be actualities. What does that mean? That means that when you're doing this subtle work and you're getting images pulled up from the subconscious, you're going to look at them as Once again, surface level, face value, and take them as they are, as opposed to seeing them as symbols that represent forces, right? So for him, the astral images reflected in the magic mirror of the subconsciousness will be actualities. He will make no attempt to translate them into terms of a higher plane and learn what they really represent. That's why I keep talking about symbols. That's why when you dream, the things that you see are not what the dream's actually about. A lot of people think that. But the things that you see in your dream, they are symbols that represent forces. And you got to look past the form. Look, he will have made himself a dwelling in the sphere of illusion, and he will be deluded by the phantasms of his own unconscious projection. Yikes. If he were able to function in terms of his said, right, this is what would be happening if you knew better, he would perceive the underlying archetypal ideas of which these magical images are but the shadows and symbolic representations. He then becomes a master in the treasure house of images instead of being hallucinated by them. He can use the images as a mathematician uses algebraic symbols. He works magic as an initiated adept and not as a magician. This is what I was explaining earlier about the dream that I had, right? And how talking about these symbols, you're not limited to what's being given to you. You can use these symbols as tools, just like what she said here. She said that he can use the images as a mathematician uses algebraic symbols. When you look at algebraic symbols, you got your A, your X, your Y, your B, and all that. They don't actually mean anything specific, do they? No, but they are representatives that can help you solve an equation. That's what all symbols are. They don't mean anything other than the meaning you give them. What you must do is utilize that meaning, make it do something for you. Honey Bunny, peace. Peace, peace. Roger, Thomas, and Santa in the building. Janae Owo, peace and greetings. Jai Jagopal says, let XRP jump up and we fly high. Hey man, I'm with it. Work some magic on it. Or maybe that's what we're supposed to do, huh? Wraith636 says, very deep subject in the chapters of the mystical Qabalah tonight. Definitely appreciate listening in. I appreciate you listening in. And I agree with you, man. This is some good stuff. Very good stuff. Very key. Oh my goodness. All right, so we will keep going just a minute, but looks like I have a guest. It would be rude for me to not say something, so I'm going to greet them, and I'll be right back. Okay? cheese and rice. Oy vey. All right. Thank you for sticking around. We still here. We still here. All right. 11:11. It's been that long, huh? Alkalinity light. Peace. Peace. Meet at the door. Man, baby mama with child at the door. All right. Let's get up out of here. It's boning Biggie, Biggie. It's boning Biggie, Biggie. Nedjo Benefield. Greetings, greetings. Welcome back, my friend. Welcome back. What must I say? What must I do to show how much I think about freaking you? That's old me. Oh man, that's old me. Goodness gracious. Going vegetarian now. I give up. Vegan. Living a holy lifestyle. All right, where were we at? So yeah, he can use the images as a mathematician uses algebraic symbols. He works magic as an initiated adept and not as a magician. 12. The mystic functioning in the Christ center of Tifereth, if he lacks the keys of Chesed, will also be hallucinated. Okay, so we just talked about um, a person in Chesed can tap into these abstract forces before they become concrete, and he can see them as the archetypes that they are. Whereas a person who isn't initiated in Chesed is limited to Yesod. So they're going to daydream. They're going to whatever visions or downloads they get. They're damn near going to take them literally, or they're not going to look too deep into them. So that's how you get people who make all kind of predictions or think that they're really tapping into something, but it always turns out to be, they come back later and say, "Oh, well, that was just my opinion. That's just, they try to downplay it because it was incorrect, essentially." Now she's going to talk about being tapped into the Tifereth sphere and not the Chesed. And as you know, as I've said earlier tonight, the Tifereth sphere represents the Christ center. So just imagine, before we even read it, what would happen to somebody who's tapped into the Christ level but can't see the symbolism of the Christ level? What do you think would happen to an individual like that? And it's happened many times. Hell, it's even happened to spiritual YouTubers I've seen. Definitely spiritual people who aren't even YouTubers, leaders, so quote unquote. Here we go. Mysteries Ascent says they think they're Jesus. Right. So let's see what Dion Fortune has to say about that. 12. The mystic functioning in the Christ center of Tifereth, if he lacks the keys of Chesed, will also be hallucinated, but in a different and more subtle way. Upon this level, he will read the magical images truly enough, referring them to that which they represent and giving them no value save as tokens, as St. Teresa has so clearly shown in her interior castle. He will fall into the error, however, of thinking that the images he perceives and the experiences he undergoes are the direct and personal dealings of God with his soul, instead of realizing that they are stages on the path. And the way that was written, I think that that's a shout out to Aleister Crowley. I think that's a subtle, what do y'all call it, sneak diss to Aleister Crowley. Interesting. Let me read that again. He will fall into the error, however, of thinking that the images he perceives and the experiences he undergoes are the direct and personal dealings of God with his soul, instead of realizing that they are stages on the path. So, even if, let's say, you're at the stage of Yasad, and you begin to see these symbols in your imagination, you begin to see these visions, these downloads, and let's say you don't take them literally. Let's say that you can see through them and see that they are representations of something. Well, the next phase of Tifereth is seeing these symbols and these visions as the direct communication of God to you, of God to your soul, right? You are now the direct channel to God, right? You start seeing that everything that you visualize and envision is God talking to you. Now, although that's a little bit better than Yasad, the truth of the matter is we're still dealing with energies, with forces that have taken form, the form of symbols, forces that have taken the form of symbols. So what that means is it is not a direct communication. It is still filtered. It is still heavily filtered. It is still heavily filtered. Pork Hill says, mushrooms got me that, and that was the thought today. Yeah, and here's the thing also, right? I've been through all these levels, so I know specifically what this is like. Now, the thing is, a true student continues to learn and doesn't stop anywhere. No matter how far you get, you never stop and think, oh, I got it figured out now. No, always a student, always teachable. So look, he will find a personal savior in the God man instead of in the regenerative influence of the Christ force. There's a difference. God man, Christ force. He will find a personal savior in the God man instead of in the regenerative influence of the Christ force. He will worship Jesus of Nazareth as God the Father, thus confounding the persons. And let's check it out. Check it out. How many Christians do you know do that? He will worship Jesus of Nazareth as God the Father, thus confounding the persons. Uh-oh. Even Christians? Even the spiritual Christians? Daniel Hughes. Peace, peace. 13. Chesed, then, is the sphere of the formulation of the archetypal idea, the apprehension by consciousness of an abstract concept, which is subsequently brought down the planes and concreted in the light of experience of the concretion of analogous abstract ideas. Chesed, then, is the sphere of the formulation of the archetypal idea, the apprehension by consciousness of an abstract concept, which is subsequently brought down the planes and concreted in the light of experience of the concretion of analogous abstract ideas. Nia Price, peace. Nia Price says, have you ever spoken on spontaneous kundalini? I thought Christ was returning through me at the time. So this is very interesting. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've even spoken with students who had a very similar experience as this. Because we have to think like we can only work with the symbols that we have. And for many people, Christ is like the highest symbol, the highest symbol. So of course that would be what you're related to. I think at my highest point, I projected all the way to the Himalayan mountains and I saw Swami Niranjanananda. And funny enough, this song was actually playing in the background. Now that was one of the most powerful visions I've ever had. Damn near indescribable. But yeah, we work with the symbols that we have, and that's what they should see. And here's the thing: did I actually go? to the Himalayan mountains? Did I actually see the Swami? Or do I recognize that these are symbols of forces that I've been connected to? Do you catch the difference here? There's no way that I can even know if it was actually him because I've never met the guy. But I do know that I had him as a symbol in my head that represented a certain force. And I came in contact with that force directly through the symbol. I hope that sheds some light. Equally, in its macrocosmic aspect, it represents a corresponding phase in the process of creation. Materialistic science believes that the only abstract concepts are those formulated by the mind of man. That's funny, right? That's funny right there. Esoteric science teaches that the divine mind formulated archetypal ideas in order that substance might take form, and that without such archetypal ideas, substance was formless and void, primordial slime awaiting the breath of life to organize into crystal and cell. So, what is she saying here? She's saying that most everybody in the world is going to believe that the mind of man was first, and the mind of man created archetypal ideas. The mind of man created gods and Zeus and Hermes and Thanos, right? We created all these different concepts. But what she's saying is, as we're speaking from an occultist point of view, no, it's the opposite direction. These archetypes existed first. And as these archetypes begin to accumulate, right? Because this is the pattern she's talking about in the tree. Force accumulates and becomes form, and that form becomes a womb. It becomes the springboard for the next thing to manifest, right? You have to accumulate a bunch of dirt, a bunch of soil, right? You plant some seeds in it, and because of the soil, because of all the tree, excuse me, the sunlight and the water and all these other external forces, because they've accumulated, now something has a womb to gestate into. The sperm and the egg connect. They start to multiply and multiply, creating a matrix that life can exist within. So Bina represents all this force, all this data that has accumulated and concreted to the point that something material springs out of it. That's what the occultist understands. It doesn't start with man and work its way up. It starts up and works its way down to man. God dreamed of you. You didn't dream of God. Sly says, does the symbol even have to be in one's head? Because you pick it up from collective archetypal symbology and not quite even understand it one's self. Yeah, and that's exactly what I just explained. First of all, look at your definition of a symbol. A symbol is literally anything that can be perceived. You ever wonder why I play this music every time we listen to every time we read this book? The music is a symbol. And like what I said before, the symbols that the force behind the symbols exist first. Then that force begins to accumulate upon itself and become a symbol. Then the symbols come together and accumulate to become a different kind of symbol. So if you work your way up, yes, you can. And this is why um, yantras are so important. This is why mantras are so important. Because mantras, and I mean the Vedic mantras, not I'm happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. The Vedic mantras like Lam, Vam, Yam, Ham, Ram, right? Those are direct symbols representing specific forces. And if you meditate on them and tap into them, you connect yourself, your consciousness, your life with those forces. Like you literally channel those forces into your life. Om Namah Shivaya, right? That's a symbol. And by focusing on it and concentrating on it, you bring the force that it represents directly into your life. Not just something that I read in a book, from direct experience, multiple times. And many of you have had the same type of experiences. Zero says, God dreams you. You don't dream God. It's how Sadhguru said. Life is a dream, but the dream is true. Yes, yes. Yes, yes. Pork Hill, welcome back. Cybernet says, indeed, zero is the first and ultimate number. From zero, infinity, comes everything. Zero is also one, and one makes every number. Mayat Mystic says, sounds like the chakra mantras. Somebody's been doing their work. Lam, Vam, Ram, Yam, Ham, Om. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. So again, right, materialistic science believes that the only abstract concepts are those formulated by the mind of man. And that's why science doesn't really cannot touch God or spiritual aspects because it's coming from the wrong direction. And because it's coming from the wrong direction, it's going to refuse and overlook evidence that is obvious. Esoteric science teaches that the divine mind formulated archetypal ideas in order that substance might take form. Right? Slow down and listen to that line. The esoteric science teaches that the divine mind, not your mind, the divine mind, right? We say the mind is all. Actually, the all is mind. That's the quote. The all is mind. And when we're talking about mind, we're not talking about you and what you're thinking about. We're talking about something that is much more expansive than your mind. It's not you. You're a part of that dream. Hell, you are a symbol. You are a symbol. Just like Lam Ram Vam, you are a walking mantra, right? Your rhythms and your patterns and the things that you do, feel, think, and say every day. These are repetitive patterns. We don't do new things every single day. We do the same things. We are creatures of habit. Now, of course, we're a collection of symbols. The elemental forces are literally the patterns that you put yourself through day after day. You're a walking sigil. You're a walking pattern. So no, you're not the divine mind. Your thoughts and your decisions are influenced by your subconscious beliefs. And your subconscious beliefs are symbols. There's only one soul. There's only one mind. The all is one. And you are an expression of that. And that's a good thing because that means that you're not concrete. You're not stuck. You can change and become whatever. In other words, if things aren't going the way that you want them to go, figure out what symbols to adjust. You should probably take my class if you haven't. Hell, any of them really, but specifically the elemental magic class. I'm adding some new stuff to it for the new year. I'm also adding some new stuff to my shadow work mastery system. I might combine those again. Well, combine those for the first time. But look, man, the force is coming down and it requires a form to take effect within your life. This is what I was talking about on the video that I did recently and took down. Let's get back to this. Esoteric science teaches that the divine mind formulated archetypal ideas in order that substance might take form, and that without such archetypal ideas, substance was formless and void, primordial slime, awaiting the breath of life to organize into crystalline cell. And this right here is actually the most ancient teaching of existence. This is Samkhya, because we're talking about Prakriti. Prakriti was pretty much just void, primordial slime. That's Mula Prakriti. That's Bina. Primordial slime awaiting the breath of life to organize into crystal and cell. Awaiting Purusha. but she's putting it in terms that the Western mind can understand. The latest researches in physics have revealed that every substance, without exception, has a crystalline structure, and the lines of tension that the psychic perceives as etheric stresses have been revealed by the X rays. Oh, goodness. Thank you, Sunshine Chick. Of course, if you appreciate this information and you would like to give thanks, please hit my Cash App. It's here above as well as in the description. 14. A very important and very imperfectly understood part in the mysteries is played by those things, by those beings who are generally called the masters. A very important and very imperfectly understood part in the mysteries is played by those beings who are generally called the masters. And see, this taps into that experience that I briefly described when I connected with the good Swami. Different schools define the term differently, and some include living adepts of a high grade among the masters. But we consider that it is advisable to make a distinction between the incarnate and disincarnate elder brethren because their mission and mode of function are entirely different. The title of master should therefore be given only to those who are free from the wheel of birth and death. In the terminology of the Western esoteric sciences, the grade of Adeptus Exemptus is assigned to Chesed. The term exemptus or exempt indicating that freedom from karma which liberates from the wheel. I am fully aware that others, thank you, useless familiar, I appreciate you. I am fully aware that others may attach a different signification to the title, and that there are persons in incarnation who hold this grade. To these I reply that such persons, if the grade be a functioning one and not merely an empty honor, are karma free and will not reincarnate. Such persons might justly be termed masters, for their consciousness is of the grade of a master. But as it is so necessary to make the distinction between incarnate and disincarnate adepts, it is better to qualify the classification by this minor distinction than to allow to humans a prestige which human nature is not fitted to bear. As long as an adept is incarnated, he will be liable to human frailties in some degree, and to the limitations imposed by old age and physical health. It is not until he is free from the wheel and functions as pure consciousness that he will escape from human bondage to heredity. Whoa, let me go back. That's nice right there. Human bondage to heredity. Think about your genetics, your DNA. Look at what she just said. As long as an adept is incarnated, he will be liable to human frailties in some degree, and to the limitations imposed by old age and physical health. It is not until he is free from the wheel and functions as pure consciousness that he will escape from the human bondage to heredity and environment. Therefore, the same reliance cannot be placed in him that can be placed in the true discarnate masters. Yeah, I'm gonna have to highlight that. So yeah, remember, brother Panic talked about, oh, I'm not coming back. I'm not reincarnating. Well, are we doing the work to no longer be attached to this wheel of heredity? Attachment, man. Attachment. Deanna, thank you so much. I appreciate your donation. Most certainly helps. I'm grateful for you all. So check that out. I know nothing says peace, Trav. I've been debating how to phrase this. What's your advice to a person who is spiritually ambitious, but probably needs grounding? Thank you, WVT. Thank you. I appreciate you as well. I know nothing to answer your question. What I would say is pay attention to the patterns of reality, man. Pay attention to the patterns that are happening in your life. When I say patterns of reality, I don't mean just abstract. Look at yourself. Start turning that eye inward. Start tracking yourself, every single thing that you do, from when you first open, hell, before you open your eyes, when you come out of that dream state into your consciousness, what's happening? What are your thoughts? What are your behaviors? Right? Um, what's the first thing that you do? What are the things that you think? How soon do you pick up your phone? What do you go to when you pick up your phone? Like, what's happening throughout the day? Just pay attention and do this every day until you start recognizing the patterns, and keep recognizing the patterns, and keep recognizing the patterns. Track them, and you're naturally going to know what to do after that point. Trust me. Once you start seeing that every single thing that you do is part of a recurring pattern, certain thoughts are automatically going to spring up. I told you, you're a sigil. So any sigil that you focus on, you will start to see the information behind it. I mean, this don't take no belief and no stretch of the mind. All this takes is for you to actually do it. So my answer to you is to pay attention to yourself and track your patterns and see what arises from that exercise. You're going to ask questions like, where did this come from? Can I even stop? Can I change? Why do I do this? How do I do this? When do I do this? There's meaning behind all that. And you're naturally going to find that there is a consciousness. Where there's pattern, there's consciousness. That's why I say that these elemental forces are the patterns of your life. You know, we're looking for fairies, we're looking for gnomes and elves, but they exist as the patterns of your life. I'm trying to tell you this. But yeah, that's my advice. You said for grounding, this will definitely be a humbling exercise for you. Yelena Pavlenko, peace and greetings. She says, that's a great question and great answer. We always getting tested by God over and over. Indeed. Hakma and Bina. Hakma and Bina. That's the divine masculine and divine feminine. Continually reproducing patterns. By the way, I'm new, so hello and God bless. Oh, and happy holidays. Happy holidays to you. I stayed in my room for Christmas. I slept. Matt Mystic says that would be the same answer if you feel lonely. I would say that the same answer would lead you to the presence of something beyond, something that won't make you feel lonely. How about that? Right? Um, Being alone doesn't necessarily equal being lonely. Being lonely is an indication that you don't feel a connection. You don't feel a connection. When you observe the patterns of your life, you will start to see that there is life in everything that you do, and there's life everywhere. And it's impossible to feel lonely when you see that you're not alone. And to be quite honest with you, I mean, this is just me. This doesn't have to be for you, but as an occultist, as a spiritual person, I prefer the company of spirits and elementals than of other people. I'm just going to keep it real. But yes, know thyself. That's the maxim. And self observation, self awareness. You're going to be led to see the presence of the spirits, whether you want to call them angels or whatever you want to call them, elementals. You're going to start to see that you're not alone. So yes, pay attention. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. All right, this one's really important. I got a little sun drawing next to it, so pay attention. 15. A very important part of the work of the masters is the concretion of the abstract ideas conceived by the logoidal consciousness. Right, so this is a very important work of what we've been talking about up here with the masters. What's a very important part of the work of the masters? Concreting the abstract ideas conceived by the logoidal consciousness. And if you were here for the cosmic doctrine study, you know that the logoidal consciousness, in this case, is the mind of the all. Let her explain. The logos, whose meditation gives birth to worlds and whose unfolding consciousness is evolution, conceives archetypal ideas out of the substance of the unmanifest. Right? So we're talking about the creator. Now, there's levels of consciousness, right? You got rocks and plants and animals and people and collections of consciousness we can call egregores or angels, all types of spiritual forces. And above that, we've got the creator, which creates all that stuff. And even above the creator, there's a higher level of consciousness, right? We can say a divine masculine and a divine feminine, also known as the Elohim. God and goddess together, that's the Elohim. But then there's a higher level than that. That's Kether, the undescribable, the one with no attributes. Eheye, right? The Bible has all these different titles for God. Now, the King James Version only says the Lord in capital letters, but the truth before the translation, it displayed each different title of God, whether it was Eheye, whether it was Shaddai, El. This particular name of God is El. That's the Logos. See, it's more complex than someone that's just talking about, you know, Jesus loves you, come to church. No, we're getting way deeper than that. And hell, even Christ is a certain level of God. It's layers to this thing, it's levels to this thing. But anyways, we're talking about the Logos, which is the mind of, we could say, the creator of the world, right? Possibly even the mind of Prakriti. So let's read that again. A very important part of the work of the masters is the concretion of the abstract ideas conceived by the logoidal consciousness. The logos, whose meditation gives birth to worlds. And the meditation gives birth to worlds. And does anybody know the Vedic deity who meditates and through his dreams, through his snoozing, gives birth to worlds? Does anybody know the Vedic entity who, in their sleep and in their dream, gives birth to worlds? There we go. There we go. Right? Vishnu. And remember earlier when she said about the preserver, right? Protector, right? So she's still teaching the Vedic concepts. She knows her stuff, but she's teaching it through the Western perspective. Wonderful. Let's keep doing. Let's keep going. The Logos, whose meditation gives birth to worlds and whose unfolding consciousness is evolution. Whose unfolding consciousness is evolution. I'm going slow because you got to get these terms. When we talk about unfolding consciousness as evolution, what you're seeing as evolution through life, for example, we can say the microbe to, some fish and alligators and monkeys and people and AI technology and all that stuff. The end result was already going to happen. It just had to unfold through, right? It was no surprise. It's only a surprise if you're in the game and you're seeing it through the perspective of your one solitary life. But if you zoom out and take the concept of time away, you'll see that the end result was already destined. We're just unfolding towards that. Okay? So, like I said, the creator of worlds, the Logos whose meditation gives birth to worlds and whose unfolding consciousness is evolution, conceives archetypal ideas out of the substance of the unmanifest. So, it conceives archetypal ideas out of the substance of the unmanifest. To use a metaphor where definition is impossible, I like that. Azathoth, right? Right? The bubbling chaos. I used to love me some Azathoth, man. And honestly, the way that they describe Azathoth, if I'm not mistaken, no, no, no. The way that they describe Yog-Sothoth is the tree, if I'm not mistaken. Look at how they describe Yog-Sothoth. And I believe that Lovecraft was talking about the tree itself, the entire tree. Azathoth being the force behind the tree. But let's keep going. These ideas remain within the cosmic consciousness of the Logos, like the seed within the flower. Think about how every flower has the seeds of the next generation. And every flower that exists now came out of the seeds of a previous flower, which came from a previous flower. That's what unfolding of consciousness means. So these ideas remain within the cosmic consciousness of the Logos, like the seed within the flower, because there is no soil therein for their germination. The logoidal consciousness, as pure being, cannot upon its own plane provide the formative aspect necessary for manifestation. So just like Hakma on its own plane cannot provide the formative aspect, it must continue unfolding until it becomes Bina. Now that it is Bina, it is the pure soil. And those same seeds that were already within can sprout. And the cycle repeats. Divine masculine, divine feminine, right? The divine masculine is the seed, divine feminine is the womb, the egg. So the Hakma force cannot conceive on its own plane. It has to wait until it becomes Bina, the feminine aspect. Now it can conceive. And that conception is the third plane. So look at what she's saying here. The logoidal consciousness, as pure being, cannot, upon its own plane, provide the formative aspect necessary for manifestation, which means that it has to continue until its creations can grab the seed and germinate it. You following me? This is some abstract stuff. Slash says, like every woman is born with all the eggs she will ovulate in her lifetime. Precisely. Precisely. Spiral Anomaly says there's more than one road. Right. More than one road. Louis, peace, peace. Welcome back, my friend. So, it is taught in the esoteric traditions that the masters discarnate consciousness is disciplined by form, but now formless. Now, get this now, we're talking about consciousness that has been disciplined by form. What's that mean? That means that that aspect of consciousness had a human body, or even still, not just a human body. Think about, like, say, the Green Lantern Corps. How you got like a human Green Lantern, and there's like I don't know, frog type of Green Lantern. Like all these different species have a Green Lantern, right? That same life force has been disciplined by form. But the thing is, the form has died. There's no longer a physical body, but the consciousness is still intact. Kind of like how Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi and even Darth Vader, or I should say Anakin, once their form was done, their consciousness was still disciplined and they retained their essence. So look, it is taught in the esoteric traditions that the masters, discarnate consciousness, disciplined by form, but now formless, in their meditations upon the Godhead, are able to perceive telepathically these archetypal ideas in the mind of God. And by realizing the practical application of them, remember what I said about practical, realizing the practical application of them to the planes of form and the line this development will follow, produce concrete images in their own consciousness, which serve to bring the abstract archetypal ideas down to the first of the planes of form, by Kabbalists called Bria. Big stuff, man. Big stuff. Big stuff. So let's go back now. When we talk about these masters, this dark discarnate consciousness, again, it's just like the Yoda and the Obi-Wan Kenobi. After their physical form perished, they were still able to communicate. They were still able to do their work. Just like a lot of, we could say, certain yogis who reach a certain level and ascend to the next plane. So what they're doing is they're not just floating around singing, they're still meditating, and they're meditating on this logos, right? This logos. And they're being utilized by the logos. In what way? Well, the logos is receiving abstract images and symbols from the even greater consciousness. But it's up to what we would call these masters to receive these images, to receive these symbols. And as they receive these symbols, since they were once physical, since they were once human or otherwise, they can take these abstract symbols and know exactly where they would be useful and appropriate, right? They know exactly where certain symbols would be useful and appropriate. So when I talk about force and energy coming down, downloads, seeking form, well, this is where it's coming from. It's being channeled by the essence of what we call chesed, from the Kabbalistic world that we call Bria. It's being channeled and it's being broken down the same way that you have these power outlets in your house, right? If the raw energy, if the raw power came through into your computer or your stove or whatever you got hooked up, it would explode. It would be too much. So you have an electrical system in your house that steps it down, that breaks it down. And this is one of the functions of these masters, is to break down the force that's coming through Kether. And by the time you receive it, it's in the form of some idea that you can apply in a practical way, in a useful and appropriate way. Does that make sense? Big stuff, man. Big stuff. Matt Mystic says this might be a crazy question, but if the end is already made, basically, is there a possibility to change the end if you jump to a different reality? Okay, so how to put it? When I say the end, I mean like this plane of Prakriti, this plane of Malkuth, it's infinite. It's not ever going to stop. It's not ever going to stop. It's a cycle. It's a loop. It's going to keep going. But the loop is so long, it's damn near impossible to see the other side of it. So things kind of unfold and repeat. But if something exists, it is a seed of something that's to come. So if you say if the end is already made, is there a possibility to change it? Yes. To grab a hold of a different seed. If you don't like the outcome of what the seed is going to gravitate towards, then the answer is to grab a different seed. But there's not going to be like an end where it's all over and done. No, Malkuth will continue to exist until your level of consciousness ascends past it. Kim B says, I know I'm going to sound crazy, but I received visions from dragons that showed me either the creation or destruction of Earth. They showed me the beings that make the Earth and that they will be reanimated, come back to life soon. I like that. I like that. Right? Because the symbology of dragons, what does that represent? The symbology of dragons, what does that represent? What kind of force are we talking about? Something ancient, something powerful, something that is pre human. Hmm, very cool. Ain't no way y'all fell for that Noah dude. Y'all know that. Y'all know the patterns. All right, so we good? Are we good? And gravy. Mm-mm. All right, so Bria. She also gave you an explanation of what's happening in Bria. If you recall about the four worlds, we've got Atziluth, then Bria, then Yetzirah, and then Asaya. You guys know that by heart, or do we need to see a diagram again? Too late. Wow, I turned right to the Chesed page. Cool. Let's zoom out just a little bit, just because I turned to the page. Here you've got Chesed, as you can see it highlighted. You see the triangle, you see the square, you see the orb, you see the crook and the flail. Now you see also why the symbol of Jupiter looks like the number 4. Mm. Chesed, mercy, the builder, the framework of manifestation, the loving father who is king, the receptacle of all powers, the kindly shepherd. But that's not what I wanted to show you. We wanted to look at the four worlds stacked on top of each other. So of course we've got the tree here. This is the four worlds, right? Atziluth, which is the archetypal world. Bria, really that's what we were talking about just now, the creative world. Then top, then below that is Yetzirah, and then Asaya. So notice how it does come down the chain from Kether to Malkuth, but it as a pattern within itself, the real chain of command is like 40 spheres. So you see how the top world of Atziluth relates to the upper triad, and how how Bria relates to the middle triad. And then, of course, Yetzirah relates to the lower triad. And then Asaya, plain and simple, is Malkuth. Okay, all right. Almost converted young Noah with the assist from Louis. I'm not so sure young Noah was a human being. But hey, what do I know? Young Noah will convert on his next go round. Where we at? Bria. All right, so 16. This then is the work of the masters. This then is the work that the masters perform in their special sphere, the sphere of the organizing, upbuilding, constructive chesed on the pillar of mercy. The work of the dark masters, ooh, who are quite different from the black adepts, ooh, is performed in the corresponding sphere of Gibura. Okay? So the work of the Dark Masters is performed in the corresponding sphere of Gibura on the Pillar of Severity, which will be considered in due course. So think about that. Think about that. Whether we're talking Jedi or Sith, they both are doing God's work. What did we learn previously? Or I should say, what was the lesson? I don't know if you learned it or not. There are no enemies, right? There are no enemies. This ain't about good or evil. It's not about good or evil. The work of the Dark Masters, who are quite different from the Black Adepts, is performed in the corresponding sphere of Gibura on the Pillar of Severity, which will be considered in due course. The point of contact between the Masters and their human disciples is in Hod. You got to be a student, right? I mean, how else would you be able to decipher what's trickling down from the higher planes if you weren't a student of the sciences? The point of contact between the masters and their human disciples is in Hod. The Sephirah of ceremonial magic, as is indicated by the Yetziratic text, which declares that from Gijula, the fourth Sephirah emanates the essence of Hod. Fat Tony says there's no such thing as bad, whether in the heart of Mother Nature. Exactly. Anita says just stay away from Dot. Hod is the answer, not Dot. We talked about Doth at the beginning of this chapter, the way station in the center of the abyss. I wonder what causes you to be so afraid of these things. Ain't gonna hurt nobody. I Know Nothing says Dark Masters, Black Adepts, Dark Brothers, Black Brothers. Dion and Crawley are suspiciously vague on this. Yes, they are, and for good reason, right? They don't want people to do the research. Or they do want you to do the research. Because if they never mentioned it, 1111, 1212, ISIS. Let's keep going. So, the point of contact between the masters and their human disciples is in Hod, the Sephirah of ceremonial magic, as is indicated by the Yetziratic text, which declares that from Gijalah, the fourth Sephirah emanates the essence of Hod. These hints given in the Yetziratic texts concerning the relations between the individual Sephirah are very important in practical occultism. Hod, then, may be taken as representing Chokmah and Chesed upon a lower arc, even as Netzach represents Bina and Gibura. This will be explained in detail when these Sephirah are dealt with, but it must be referred to briefly now in order to make the function of Chesed intelligible. I love it. Love it. "17. We have now reached a point in the scheme of the tree where the type of activity comes within the range of human consciousness." This is good for us, right? We're now reaching aspects of the tree that the human mind can kinda sorta grasp. Everything else that we just read was beyond the human mind. So when we talk about Kether, Hakma, and Bina, and even the Abyss and Doth, these are things that the human mind is it doesn't even expand that far. It doesn't even expand that far. You've got to use a different function of consciousness than the human mind. See, the physical body is a function of consciousness. The mind around that body is a function of consciousness. And then there's more layers that extend beyond that. But as far as the upper triad, the body and the human mind, it just doesn't go up that far. It simply doesn't go up that far. And as she said in this book, chapters before, it's up to us to acquire the skill of mentation that is beyond thought. We have now reached a point in the scheme of the tree where the type of activity comes within the range of human consciousness. In our study of the preceding Sephirah, we were formulating metaphysical concepts. These concepts, although remote from immediate application to the life of form, are exceedingly important. For unless they are at the basis of our understanding of esoteric science, we shall fall into superstition and use magic as magicians, not as adepts. In other words, we shall be unable to transcend the bondage of the planes of form and will be hallucinated and fall under the domination of the phantoms evoked by the magical imagination, instead of using them as the beads on the abacus of our calculations, which is as if the engineer used the slide rule as if it were a foot rule. Sheesh. It's funny because that's exactly what I was attempting to explain earlier when I talked about my attempts to explore the abyss and Doth, and the things that I found can be summed up with this sentence here. The concepts as far as in the abyss and in the clip off even, these concepts, although remote from immediate application to the life of form, right? So they are so far remote from our life of being form, they're damn near useless. So yeah, you'll find some cool and some interesting and exciting things, but you won't be able to do anything with it. That's speaking of the clip off and the abyss. For unless they are at the basis of our understanding of esoteric science, we shall fall into superstition and use magic as magicians, not as adepts. In other words, we shall be unable to transcend the bondage of the planes of form and will be hallucinated and fall under the domination of the phantoms evoked by the magical imagination, instead of using them as the beads on the abacus of our calculations, which is as if the engineer used the slide rule as if it were a foot rule. Long ass sentences, boy. Louis says, little sidebar, Travis. Doth is pronounced Dayat, sort of like Ma'at is pronounced Mayat. All right. I will do my due diligence to update my pronunciation. Dayat. That's why we got that little apostrophe in there, right? Dayat. So amazing. The form you communicate the knowledge. I admire that. Thank you. I appreciate that, Zero. Anita says, I like this reading, but that pen is too gay. I feel like, wait a minute now. You must know something I don't know. How can a pen be gay? You must be working on some information from the abyss. Because never in my life, these pens don't even have sex. How can this pen be gay? You you got to know something I don't know. He got some. Listen, y'all need to hit up Anita. Anita got some knowledge. that I would never have fathomed. I would have never how? Goodness gracious. I didn't know that my pen had a sexuality, had a sexual side, let alone to be homosexual. That's crazy. Dayot. Yes, sir. I thought it was cool to hear it like that when I was tuned into a brother talking about the Kabbalah. Gotcha, gotcha. I went and says unicorns catching strays. I wouldn't say the unicorns are catching strays. We're this is a projection, isn't it not? This is someone's inner symbolism, right? We reveal through our communication what our inner symbolism is, what how we relate to reality. So that's his symbolism. That's not my symbolism. That belongs completely to Anita. But I never would have heard anything like that. Let's keep going. I would have never heard anything like that. Hell no, that pen is the most masculine phallic instrument I ever seen. Hey, symbolism, symbolism. I try to stay out of the forcing of duality, right, onto objects that don't even require gender. I try to stay out of that, but some people can't think beyond that. And that, that's like what you described before, not being able to see the forest for the trees. And that's fine, right? That's fine. Everyone has their levels of understanding. I'm not here to make any judgments. I'm just here to teach the science. And if you don't know, then now you know. 18. Chesed then reflects into Hod through the Christ center of Tifereth, just as Geburah reflects into Netzach. This teaches us a great deal, for it indicates that for consciousness to rise from form to force, and for force to descend to form, it must pass through the center of equilibrium and redemption, to which are assigned the mysteries of the crucifixion. Ah, I'll read that one more time, specifically because when she says the rise from form to force, she's talking about from Netzach to Tifereth to Geburah. And when she says to descend to form, right, for force to descend to form, she's talking about Chesed to Tifereth to Hod. So let's read that again. Chesed then reflects into Hod through the Christ center of Tifereth, just as Geburah reflects into Netzach. This teaches us a great deal, for it indicates that for consciousness to rise from form to force, and for force to descend into form, it must pass through the center of equilibrium and redemption. It always must pass through Tifereth, to which are assigned the mysteries of crucifixion. Got it? So the mysteries of crucifixion does not belong to Jesus Christ alone. The mysteries of crucifixion belongs to the exchange of force and form, whether it's force becoming form or form becoming force. Think about, like, say, exchange. If you want to send US dollars to somebody in the UK, you've got to put those dollars through an exchange, and it becomes a different currency that the other side can use, right? If you want to convert your US dollars into crypto, you've got to go through. If you want to convert one crypto to another crypto, it's got to go through an exchange, right? That's what Tifereth represents. That's what the crucifixion is. It must die in one form and become reborn in another form, right? So think about that. 19. It is to the sphere of Chesed that the exalted consciousness of the adept rises in his occult meditations. It is here that he receives the inspirations which he works out on the planes of form. So, like what she said earlier, this is where you receive those seeds, those abstract ideas that you slowly break down into something practical, something useful and appropriate. Meow Mystic says, crucify the ego. Absolutely. Absolutely. Kim B says, I like how the horn makes an excellent pointer. Me too, right? I think that's a big part of why I've always used these pins on these book studies. Just for Anita, we're going to make sure that the blue unicorn gets more screen time. Hey, what color does Chesed represent anyway? Where are we? So it is here that he receives the inspirations which he works out on the planes of form. It is here that he meets the masters as spiritual influences, contacted telepathically without any intermingling of personality. So important, right? It is here that he meets the masters as spiritual influences, contacted telepathically without any intermingling of personality. This is the true and the highest mode of contact with the masters. Contact with them as mind to mind in their own sphere of exalted consciousness. When the masters are seen clairvoyantly as robed beings, the colors of whose robes indicate their ray, they are being perceived reflected into the sphere of Yasod, which is the kingdom of phantasms and hallucinations. We are treading on precarious ground when we have to meet the masters here. It is here that the anthropomorphic form is given to the spiritual inspiration, which so misleads those psychics who cannot rise to Chesed. It is thus that the announcement of a spiritual impulse flowing out upon the world gets interpreted as the coming of a world teacher. Hmm. Interesting to note, Yasad is the function of imagination. So typically when you're seeing these things in your mind's eye, typically when you are visualizing through meditation, you are working through Yasad. You are working through Yasad. Everything above is reflected down through Yasad. But the thing is, you've got to have that capacity to expand beyond your mind. That's why Yasad is the illusion. Because when you look at Yasad, you're thinking, oh, this is all there is. Yasad is like the screen of a computer. I used to work at Circuit City selling computers and stuff. I was surprised at how many people believe that the screen itself is the computer. No, the monitor actually takes what the computer does and gives it visuals. Yasad is the computer screen. The actual computer, the tall rectangular box, that's going to be uh, the middle triad. That's going to be your Gibera, Chesed, and Tifereth. So just like the screen itself is not the computer, it's just uh, digesting and putting into form those ones and zeros so you can interact with it. That's what Yasad is. That's why Yasad is the storehouse of images, the realm of imagination. And that's why it's easy for people to get stuck in Yasad and think that they're doing some serious work. But that's just like the people who think that the screen is the computer itself. Check. I know nothing says I kind of care more about what the masters are communicating to you than what pin you use. I agree. I agree. And I appreciate that sentiment. So yeah, we're using Yasad, but don't get confused, right? So I'll read that again with that in mind. It is here that he receives the inspirations which he works out on the planes of form, right? It is Chesed where you receive the inspiration, but you work it out down here in the lowest triad and Malkuth. It is here that he meets the masters as spiritual influences contacted telepathically without any intermingling of personality. So that's Chesed. If you're able to raise your consciousness up to the level of Chesed and see these things as abstract without your opinion, without your ego getting involved, without your likes or dislikes. You can meet the consciousness in a clean laboratory, in a sterile, uncontaminated place. This is the true and the highest mode of contact with the masters. Contact with them as mind to mind in their own sphere of exalted consciousness. So let's check that out. That was Chesed. Now let's talk about Yasad. When the masters are seen clairvoyantly as robed beings, the colors of whose robes indicate their ray, they are being perceived reflected into the sphere of Yasad. So boom, when you see these masters in their form of having their robes on and whatnot, we're talking about you're in the realm of Yasad. Now, Yasad is taking the ones and zeros and raw data that the Ascended Masters are giving you, but it's translating it now with your mind involved, with your ego involved, with your likes and your dislikes involved. See, Chitta and Yasad as a storehouse of images, it's mostly pulling from the images that you already know, that you've already seen. That's why when you dream of the stuff that you've already experienced, because that's what you've got in your library of correspondences. And that's why your awesome teacher, Travis Mages, says continually, build your library of correspondences so you can build better dreams. Since Yasad, Cheetah, the storehouse of images, only contains what you've already experienced, no matter what force you get pulled down, it can only take the form of what you've already experienced. Check? So, look, when meeting the ascended masters or the ascended mind in Chesed, you're meeting them pure, unintermingled, right? Without any intermingling. So when it's happening in Yasad, you're seeing them in colored robes, whether it's a black robe, an orange robe, a purple robe. They're being perceived reflected into the sphere of Yasad, which is the kingdom of phantasms and hallucinations. We are treading on precarious ground when we have to meet the masters here, because it's easy to get misled. Because look, let's say they take the form of, Obi-Wan Kenobi from Star Wars. This is dangerous because no matter what message they're bringing you, you've already got a background library of Obi-Wan Kenobi. So it's going to get mixed up with the message. I know that makes sense. I just hope it does. I mean, or as long as you're listening to this, it's hitting the subconscious mind and you'll break it down later. This is probably my fourth time reading this book online. So hey, sometimes it takes a while, and that's fine. Just make sure you're getting the message. So they're being perceived reflected into the sphere of Yasad, excuse me, with the kingdom, which is the kingdom of phantasms and hallucinations. We are treading on precarious ground when we have to meet the masters here. It is here that the anthropomorphic form is given to the spiritual inspiration, which so misleads those psychics who cannot rise to Chesed. Now you see why it's so important. It is thus that the announcement of a spiritual impulse flowing out upon the world, right? So say an announcement comes down from the higher planes. And those of us who are psychically sensitive feel it. And that announcement is there's a spiritual impulse that's flowing out over the whole world. The whole world is getting a spiritual upgrade, right? Say that's the message. If you can't rise beyond initiation in Yasad, you're going to interpret that as the coming of a world teacher. You're going to think a new Jesus is coming. A new Sadhguru is coming. You're going to think that Maitreya is coming to save the world. Even worse, you're going to think some American president is going to come and save the world. When in all actuality, you that was the only symbol that you had for these higher forces to deliver the message. And you ran with that symbol literally. You get how this works now. This is some good shit, man. I'm gonna say it again. You're not gonna get this at the dollar store. You ain't gonna get this at Walmart. You ain't gonna get this at Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's just not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. You're not gonna get it at Five Below. I know nothing says if Bina is the vessel of Chakma, then is that the same as Yasad being the force of the form of Malkuth. Absolutely. And that's what the etheric plane is. Absolutely. That's what the etheric plane is. Jai Jagopal says, does that mean we are creating it? Well, that's what I'm saying. If these higher forces project information downward and you receive it, if you don't know how to raise your consciousness to the level of non attachment, if you can't sit there and meditate yourself out of yourself, and you know what I mean if you've meditated, right? If you just sit there and meditate, some people they just think about, oh, what am I gonna do tomorrow? What am I gonna eat for dinner? What happened yesterday? I gotta pay these bills. Most people are gonna sit there and just run through themselves. But if you really meditate and you learn to detach from the five senses and you expand beyond the physical form, if you expand beyond your thoughts and your personality and your ideas, if you just expand, you'll start to get closer and closer to a state that doesn't involve your personal opinions. Now, if you're able to expand like that and a download comes through, you can meet that download unfiltered. You can meet that download without having to include, oh, I gotta pay the bills and I gotta pick the kids up from school, without any of that intermingling with it. But if you've never expanded that far and you still manage to get a download from on high, you're going to identify that download with something in your mind. So again, if this download came of this great spiritual revolution, you're it's going to you're going to interpret it. Your subconscious mind is automatically going to place a symbol on it. It's automatically going to place a symbol on it. And you're going to take the symbol literally because you don't understand how to go past the symbol. And that's how most people deal with spiritual stuff. They take it literally. Race 636. You're not going to get this at Walgreens or CVS. You're not going to get this at Wawa. Fat Tony says, knowledge you can't get from college. Okay, I'm going to have to take that one. Knowledge you can't get from college. Let me write that down. That's a good one. I Know Nothing says, I'm understanding the metaphors. The more neutral the image we choose to encapsulate the spiritual form, the purer the message because it's not biased by our prejudices, so to speak. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Great way to put it. That's the true observer, says Zero. Facts, facts, facts. Now imagine if you could take that state and live in that state while you're walking around the body. Now we're talking about enlightenment and spiritual growth. You see, I don't know what these other folks talking about, but if you can just conceive of that, picture yourself walking around and what was Kether, right? Kether is a state of consciousness without attributes, without parts. It is whole, it's complete. Imagine walking around this place as the observer, understanding that yes, there is a physical body. Yes, there are emotions, there are desires, there are fears. But don't none of that shit matter. I'm not attached to any of it. It doesn't affect me because this is not me. Hmm. Architect Dad MD says, is that mindfulness? Precisely. Precisely. Jai Jagopal says, unconditional love 24/7, 365, without any judgments. And that's what we aspire to. And just like what she said earlier about the whole master thing, I can tell you from experience, you can reach that and lose it. You can reach that and lose it, and you can get it back again. Right? So it's not permanent. As long as you're walking around this place, you can attain it, but you can also let go of it. That's why it's called a spiritual practice. That's why it's do the work, because it must be maintained, right? It must be maintained. I spoke in the beginning of this live stream about how the force accumulates until it builds a form, and it keeps accumulating until that form has to break down, and the process repeats, building and breaking, building and breaking. In your life, you've gone through this as well. You've built up yourself into something great, and it fell apart, and you had to pick up the pieces and build again, and it falls apart, and it keeps going until you become aware of that process, and you build back better. No Biden, no Biden. You build back better, all Bina. So enjoy the process. Fuck it. If it falls apart, you're gonna build it back again. It's never the end of the world. It's never the end. We all make mistakes, and we all win. If you can see that. In fact, what's even better than making mistakes or winning is that none of it matters. None of it matters. Are you doing that work of expanding your consciousness to really see? That's what the truth is. Framestar Films. Peace, my brother. Peace. 20. As we come down the tree into those spheres, more within the range of our comprehension than the three supernals, we find the symbols associated with each Sephirah becoming more and more eloquent as they speak to our experience instead of causing us to reason by analogy. So now, as we go down from Chesed and all the way down the tree, we're getting closer and closer to concepts that the human mind can interpret clearly. But there's always that risk of misinterpretation by not understanding what symbols represent. 21. The magical image representing Chesed is a mighty throned and crowned king. A mighty throned and crowned king. Throned because he is seated in stability, in a kingdom at peace, not going forth in his chariot to war, as is suggested by the magical image of Gibra. And you guys have seen the chariot card. The additional titles of Chesed, majesty, love, bear out this concept of the benignant king, the father of his people, and the situation of Chesed in the center of the pillar of mercy further bears out the idea of stability and ordered and merciful law, governing for the good of the governed. The title of the angelic host associated with Chesed, the Chashmalim, or brilliant ones, enhances the idea of the royal splendor of Gijala, which is an alternative title frequently used for a Chesed. The mundane chakra assigned to Chesed, Jupiter, the great benignity, what is that word? Benignity? Benignity? The mundane chakra assigned to Chesed, Jupiter, the great benignity of astrology, right? Because when we see Jupiter in our charts, that's typically a good omen, right? That's typically something we look forward to. Jupiter and Gemini right now. Expansion. And after reading this, you can kind of get more of an understanding of Jupiter in astrology. We typically think of Jupiter as expansion and growth and multiplication. Well, here's why. It takes the seed from the logos and fleshes it out, builds it out, finds useful and appropriate place to plant that seed, and lets the process begin. Confirms the whole chain of associations. Good stuff. Good stuff. That's a good point, Sly. Sly says right, because life is a preparation for death, the way I see it. How well and unattached and enlightened can you pass beyond this body and life? Exactly. Rainwater, peace, peace. So the G is not silent. So I know in benign, the G is silent. Benignity, benignity, benignity. Don't come in here with all that benignity. Every time your sister come around, she bring all that benignity and whatnot. You ain't nothing but a big. Okay, benignity. Gotcha. So let's see. The mundane chakra associated assigned to Chesed, Jupiter, the great benignity of astrology, confirms the whole chain of associations. Got it. Useless Familiar says, I've always associated Jupiter with luck. Luck and abundance go hand in hand. And that would be a great association, right? The king during peacetime. That's what we're talking about. 100% benignity. Ultra Instinct Peace. Ultra Instinct says, I don't know what to be, Trev. Benignity. How about that? Benignity. All right, I'll stop. 22. Upon the microcosmic or subjective side, we find that the virtue assigned to this sphere of experience is that of obedience. It is the only it is only through the virtue of obedience that the subject can profit by the wise rule of chesed. We have to sacrifice much of our independence and egoism in order to share in the amenities of organized social life. From this sacrifice and restriction, there is no escape. In this sphere, no more than in any other, is it possible to eat one's cake and have it. There is no such thing as liberty if liberty is to be interpreted as unrestricted self will. There is no such thing as liberty if liberty is to be interpreted as unrestricted self will. I'm just going to do what wow, that's my truth. Well, that's just my truth. Like, no, there's a structure to these things. The force of gravity resists us, if nothing else. Liberty might be defined as the right to choose one's master. For a ruler, one must have in all organized corporate life. Else, there is chaos. Big facts. Big facts, right? Liberty might be defined as the right to choose one's master. For a ruler, one must have in all organized corporate life. Else, there is chaos. That's a lesson you got to learn. Some people got to learn it the hard way, right? Because I know, oh, no master's above me. I serve no master, right? I mean, but when you really examine these things with wisdom, we may be fit, you personally, I as well, we may be fit to rule in some places. But I tell you what, there are many other places where we are absolutely not fit to rule. How can you expect anyone to follow if you can't follow? Is that a hard G? That's what I'm thinking, right? We have to ask Wikipedia, I guess. So let's read that again, right? There is no such thing as liberty if liberty is to be interpreted as unrestricted self will. The force of gravity resists us, if nothing else. Liberty might be defined as the right to choose one's master. For a ruler, one must have in all organized corporate life, else there's chaos. It is effectual and inspiring leadership that is the crying need of the world at the present time. And country after country is seeking and finding the ruler who approximates most closely to its national ideal. You better understand it. I know some people cried about the president and some people got upset and mad but you got to understand it's nothing. It don't matter what you think. The country as a hive mind gets what it wants, right? So we can complain about, oh, music just ain't the same no more. It's gone downhill. Or, sports ain't the same anymore. Movies ain't the same anymore. Nothing is quality. You got to understand, this is what the hive mind of humanity desires. That's what we have. That's what we have, right? So look, country after country is seeking and finding the ruler who approximates most closely to its national ideal, right? The individual who fits the symbol of the energy and the force that people are desiring as a whole, right? We as a nation, we're attempting to attract a certain energy. And when it comes to the presidents or whoever leaders, we're looking at them as symbols. And whoever fits the energy best, we're going to choose them. It don't matter about nothing else. Same thing with music. Same thing with everything, with celebrities. Look at the people that you put on a pedestal. They are nothing more than symbols that represent a force that you want in your life. May Mystic says, and who is the queen bee? That's a good question. Desiring as a what? Hmm? Ultra Instinct says, do NPCs count? Absolutely. Do NPCs vote? Do NPCs purchase music and rack up streams? Do NPCs pay for sports ball tickets to go sit at the stadium and watch the ball game? Do NPCs run up and run down the stock market? Absolutely. There's strength in numbers. Races have definitely been there, especially with the music and movies. A lot has changed. Right, right. The hive mind gets what the hive mind wants. All right, one more time. One more time. It is effectual and inspiring leadership that is the crying need of the world at the present time. And country after country is seeking and finding the ruler who approximates most closely to its national ideal and is falling in as one man behind him. It is the benign, organizing, ordering Jupiter influence that is the only medicine for the world's sickness. As this comes to bear, the nations will recover their emotional poise and physical health. So perhaps it's a good thing for a person to represent as close as they can the aspect of chesed when dealing as a leader to the people. Hmm. 23. Conversely, the vices assigned to chesed, bigotry, hypocrisy, gluttony, and tyranny, are all social vices. Social vices. Bigotry refuses to move with the times or see another point of view, both fatal vices in racial relationships. Hypocrisy implies that we do not give ourselves wholeheartedly to the corporate life, but, like Ananias, keep back a part of the price. Gluttony exposes us to the temptation of taking more than our fair share of the common store, and is but another name for selfishness. And tyranny is that wrong use of authority, which arises where there are taints of cruelty and vanity in the nature. 24. The correspondence in the microcosm is given as the left arm, which indicates a less dynamic mode of the functioning of power than that of the right hand, which grasps the sword in the magical image of Gibera. The left hand, oh, a typo, cool. The left hand holds the orb, which signifies the earth itself, and shows that all is held secure in the firm grasp of the ruler. See the orb in the left hand? See, all this stuff is specific. You see that? Right? So that shows that all is held secure in the firm grasp of the ruler. Chesed, in fact, denotes firmness rather than dynamic energy and strength. Firmness. So we can see echoes of Chokmah there, right? The rod. 25. The mystical number of Chesed is said to be 4, and this is often represented as a four-sided figure or tetrahedron. A talisman of Jupiter is always set up on such a figure. Another symbol of Chesed is the solid figure as understood in geometry. Ooh. So here's an interesting download. A lot of times in money magic or wealth magic, we use the color blue or the symbols of Jupiter. But the thing is, understanding what Chesed means, it not in itself is going to bring abundance. What it represents is an abundance of those seeds that you grasp and pull down and develop. Because true abundance is having the seeds, not just the fruit. Teach a man how to fish instead of giving him a fish. So perhaps if you do that type of magic, that type of blue magic, it in itself isn't going to provide wealth and abundance, but it will provide opportunities to find the right seeds. So it's still your job to take those seeds and to flesh them out. When you're under the influence of a ritual with Jupiter magic, blue magic, keep your eyes open for the seeds. Good stuff. All right. 25. The mystical number of Chesed is said to be 4, and this is often represented as a four-sided figure or tetrahedron. A talisman of Jupiter is always set up on such a figure. Another symbol of Chesed is the solid figure as understood in geometry. The reason for this is easily seen if one considers the geometrical figures assigned to the Sephiroth, which have already been studied. The point is assigned to Kether, the line to Chokmah, the two-dimensional plane to Binah. Consequently, the three-dimensional solid naturally falls to Chesed. So the point extends into a line, the line extends into a two-dimensional figure, and that two-dimensional figure expands into a three-dimensional figure. That's your Kethra, Chokmah, Binah, and Chesed. Binah, Kethra, Chokmah, Binah, Roger, Thomas, and Santa. Almost done, right? Almost done. Once she starts talking about the tarot cards, we're at the end of the chapter. 26. But more is signified in this connection than a mere random series of symbols. The solid essentially represents manifestation, as it is known to our three-dimensional consciousness. We cannot conceive of one or two-dimensional existence save mathematically or symbolically. Chesed, as we have already noted, is the first of the manifested Sephiroth. Pause on that real quick. Remember the abyss separates the upper triad from the lower tree? And I mentioned that there were two distinctively different dimensions of existence. And what she said before was that the upper triad represents potentiality, potentiality, whereas the lower parts of the tree represents manifestation. And how Kether's a point, Chokmah's a line, and Binah is a flat two-dimensional figure. Two-dimensional figure. Whereas Chesed now, past the abyss, becomes a three-dimensional figure. This is where the three-dimensional reality starts. Or we could say that the difference between the upper triad and the lower triad is the difference between two-dimensional existence and three-dimensional existence. Think about Super Mario, the original Mario, when you're running and jumping in that two-dimensional landscape versus like the new Mario games where you have a completely three-dimensional reality. Think about the difference between those two. You can't even properly like replicate one into the other. You need a whole new set of controls to operate a two-dimensional Nintendo game versus a three-dimensional Nintendo Switch game. You feel me? Poor Kill says Mario Maker had to make a whole new thing for that. Absolutely. My son was so happy to get Luigi's Mansion 2 for his Switch. I got him 3, and he beat that game to pieces, but he already wanted 2. So, hey, it works out. I'm glad my son doesn't want much. When I was a kid, I actually got upset when I didn't get what I wanted, until I got older and realized it doesn't really matter. Let's keep going. Ray says, Travis, using Mario was a good breakdown. Thanks. Came to me in the moment, right? But that's a good thing to remember. The difference between the upper triad and the lower tree is the difference between the two-dimensional and the three-dimensional. It requires a completely different set of equipment. Hence why we've got the abyss there. And like I said, it's a completely different reality, and who knows how many realities there, how many lower trees there are under Bina. It's countless. And any other existence isn't really useful and appropriate to us. Hence why the abyss is so deep. Hence why the clip off is to be found in the abyss. Because all the other realities that exist are there, and they're of no use to us, and easy to get lost in. Okay. The solid essentially represents manifestation as it is known to our three-dimensional consciousness. We cannot conceive of one or two-dimensional existence save mathematically or symbolically. Chesed, as we have already noted, is the first of the manifested sephirah. Therefore, how naturally does the symbol of the solid figure come into line with the rest of its symbolism? The solid figure used for the purpose of symbolizing chesed is usually the pyramid, which is a four-sided figure consisting of three faces and a base, thus expressing the numerological quality of chesed. Another way to think about this is, for Kether, think of the point. For Hawkma, think of the line. Now for Bina, think of that line extending into a triangle. That's why the triangle is representative of Bina. So think about Kether as the point, the line shoots out to make Hawkma, and it concludes by connecting itself. That's Bina. So that's the two-dimensional flat image of Bina. Now, to cross the abyss and get to Chesed, think about each of those three sides of that triangle coming up, right? Through height and length and depth, creating that pyramid. Now it's a solid figure. And now we have a container for the essence of life. 27. There are many different aspects of the cross as a significant mystery symbol, besides the Calvary cross of the Christian mystery, and each of these crosses represent different modes of the functioning of spiritual power, just as do the different forms of the holy names of God. The form of cross associated with Chesed is the equal armed cross, which is symbolic of the four elements in equilibrium and implies the ruling of nature by a synthesizing influence which brings all things into balanced harmony. 28. The orb, wand, scepter, and crook, right? The orb, the wand, the scepter, the crook, all assigned to this Sephirah, express so perfectly the different aspects of the benign royal power of Chesed that they are in no need of elucidation. 29. The four tarot cards that are placed in Chesed when the pack is set up for divination carry out the ruling idea in the correspondence. The four wands symbolizes the perfect work. So here we got the four wands. This symbolizes the perfect work. You see the kingdom in the background. See the wraith going across, the people celebrating. In fact, you see the male and female celebrating. According to the king scale, red represents Bina, so that would be the feminine. And that grayish blue represents Hawkma, that would be the masculine. And of course, the white represents Kether. So remember what she said. Both Kether and Hawkma are projecting forces, are masculine forces. But you can see there's a little bit of Kether within the woman as well. And of course, the yellow is Malkuth. So here's the Four of Wands. What's she say about that? The Four of Wands symbolizes perfected work, thus representing admirably the achievement of the king in peacetime in his well governed kingdom, right? Peacetime in his well governed kingdom. That's what we're seeing here. That's the Four of Wands. The Four of Cups is the Lord of Pleasure. So check this out. This is the Four of Cups. What do you see? See homie sitting under a tree. Again, there's the red. Bina. Lots of Malkuth energy going on here. What's it about? The Four of Cups is called the Lord of Pleasure and is in keeping with the title of splendor assigned to Chesed and with the brilliancy of its angelic host. Oh, well, she doesn't go deep into that. Thank you, J. Baldale. Third Deacon Cancer. So it's the Four of Cups. The moon in Cancer. The moon in Cancer. The Four of Wands was Venus in Aries. Venus in Aries. They go together nicely, don't they? So here's the Four of Swords. Notice we got this fellow here laying on top of his thing. You got the three swords on the wall and the one sword underneath him. Now, before, when I first saw this card, I thought this was like a grave, like he was dead, and a tomb. It might be better to see that he's meditating, right? Look at those three swords aligned with his third eye, throat chakra, and heart chakra. See that? And the image on the window, you've got what appears to be similar to the Hierophant card, someone sitting in some position of power and another person that's beneath them, possibly seeking guidance. But this person in the center is ultimately meditating. What's that all about? The Four Swords indicates rest from strife and agrees perfectly with the significance of the seated ruler. Now here's the Four of Pentacles, the Lord of earthly power. What's going on here with the Lord of earthly power? Got my mind on my money and my money on my mind. Standing on principle, right? All about the material plane. Let's see what that says. The Four of Pentacles is the Lord of earthly power, a symbolism so obvious that it needs no elucidation. So yeah, she said that should be obvious. I agree. Let's continue. Let's continue. Okay, well, that's funny. Wraith 636 says, so my question, Brother Travis, with this topic in the current season, where would Capricorn fit into this? It's funny you say that because the Four of Pentacles is actually represented by the Sun in Capricorn. The Sun in Capricorn. All right. Kim B says, on a DMT journey, I was pulled out of my body and became a swirling mass of symbols, light, and color. All that existed of me were my thoughts. I panicked for a moment, thinking, what am I stuck here? Once I accepted that I am okay with just being a part of the universe, I was returned to my body. Would that be considered ego death? I would say so. I would even say that that's very akin to what I was describing as far as in meditation, expanding past your body, your thoughts, your personality into a state of non-attachment, really. And I think that's a valuable experience that we all should have. Maybe, not maybe not necessarily DMT, but maybe so, right? It doesn't matter really how you get there. What matters is that you have that experience, whether it's through meditation or DMT or mushrooms or whatever, because it shows you beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is existence beyond the body, right? And unless you know that beyond a shadow of a doubt, it's very difficult to proceed deeper into the spiritual sciences. 30. The consideration of the Yetziradic text has been left to the last in this study, in order that the sequence of the symbolism unfolding in such ordered relationship might not be broken in upon. Moreover, this text contains so much significance that it is best studied when we are as fully equipped as possible with the cognate symbolism. Much that relates to the teaching contained in this text, however, has already been studied as it came up for examination in relation to the preceding Sephiroth. I will not repeat this at length, but content myself with referring the student to those pages where the matters are dealt with in detail, thus avoiding needless repetition, which otherwise is bound to occur in the study of a subject such as the Tree of Life, where the different symbols represent the same potency upon different levels of manifestation or under different aspects. 31. The fourth path is called the cohesive intelligence. How clearly can we see the meaning of these words when we have learnt to look upon Chesed through the symbol of the king seated upon his throne, organizing the resources and prosperity of his kingdom, and causing all things to be drawn together into an ordered whole for the common good. It is also called the receptive intelligence in the Yetziradic text, and this is borne out in the symbol of the left arm, which is assigned to the Sephirah in the microcosm. 32. It is also called the receptive intelligence in the Yetziradic text, and this is borne out in the symbol of the left arm, which is assigned to the Sephirah in the microcosm. 33. Chesed contains all the holy powers, and from it emanate all the spiritual virtues with the most exalted essences. The teaching implicit in this statement has already been elucidated in the previous exegesis under the concept of archetypal ideas. And finally, 34. They emanate one from another by virtue of the primordial emanation, the highest crown, Kether. These concepts have already been dealt with in relation to the second Sephirah, Chokmah, when the overflowing of force from sphere to sphere was considered. Boom. And there we have it. Chapter 18 of the Mystical Qabalah, Chesed. Chapter 18 of the Mystical Qabalah, Chesed. As always, there were major keys in this text. Major keys that I hope that you were able to grab a hold of. several passages to meditate on. Several. So think about not only expansion and growth, but organization. Think about the concept of how chesed borders upon the abyss, right? And here we have the abyss right here. There's chesed. There's kether, hakma, bina, and see how this is the abyss, that line going across. And this is where we get this concept of Doth, which is that invisible, non-existent Sephiroth. And right after that is chesed. So what that means is that chesed is receptive, the receptive intelligence. Chesed is able to receive information that the lower Sephiroth will not have an opportunity to do so. Jai Jagopal says, your symbols and to change negative ones to positive changed my life. Thank you, thanks you. With your guys' grace and God's grace, learning as the lowest of the low. And look at what they say, man. Or they say that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Like when you rise yourself to a certain level of understanding, the understanding comes. I'm a symbol just like you're a symbol, right? Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. Okay, so we'll be back again on Saturday to go to the next aspect of this triad, which is Gibera. And then finally, after Gibera, we will go through Tifereth. So we will complete the middle triad for this year of 2024. Then 2025, we'll deal with the lower triad and Malkuth, and we'll see where life takes us after that. So again, I hope that you learned something. Happy and grateful to have you here. As always, this is a pleasure, and I'll see you on the next one. If you're interested in taking one of my classes, very, very soon, I'll be opening the doors to the next session. So get ready for that. Hopefully here just before the year concludes. But as I mentioned, we're going to do something with the Elemental Magic Mastery System. I'm going to be adding some new layers to it, especially in light of this Qabalah stuff. So prepare for that, get ready for that. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your year. Cosmic Traveler says, I like the nice touch with the tarot nuggets. Yeah, yeah. Like what Dion Fortune says, these are three pieces of the same entity: tarot, Kabbalah, and astrology. They're not three different things. They're three parts of one entity. One is Rajasic, one is Tamasic, and one is Sattvic. But to understand one, you've got to understand them all. Magic Marcel says, so is it right to say that Binah passes through Doth to Chesed, or no, since it's otherworldly? So yes, Binah passes through Doth into Chesed. And that journey is unimaginable. It's unimaginable because we're literally going from 2D NES Mario to 3D. Johnny, what's the newest Mario game? Sunshine? Huh? Brothership? Oh. We're going from Mario NES to Mario and Luigi Brothership. So imagine the journey. Let's say if Mario was a living being, imagine the journey he would take from going Mario 1 to the newest Mario that came out. That's a journey that literally spans like what, 30 years in our time. but we're talking about something cosmic. So as Bina is traveling through the abyss, it's becoming, it's accumulating to the point that it overflows and breaks and becomes force again. And that's part of what makes it otherworldly. It expands to a completely different dimension of being. Kin Fitness Peace. Kin Fitness says, Mr. Magus, you are fucking amazing. Thank you for just being you. Gratitude. Thank you. All right. All right. So, any other questions about Chesed or Kether or Hakma or Bina? To infinity and beyond. Kim B says, thank you. The dragons came to me, then I sought out DMT to see if I could communicate with them to make sense of what I was shown. Haven't been able to see them again. Perhaps you haven't been able to see them again in the same form. Because remember what was said about Yasad? Um, the force comes down into a form, but remember they are symbols that your subconscious mind already has stocked up. So it was the appropriate symbol at the time. What if they are more than just the symbol of the dragon? What if it's something much more and it has been communicating with you in other ways? Architect Dad MD says, you said the Elohim was masculine and feminine together. Absolutely. Literally, literally, that's what Elohim means. God and goddess together. And specifically, that is the God aspect at the level of Bina. Good stuff. Matt Mystic says, how can you learn the new faster? I know a few, not all. I feel like a newbie still. I just study different things and I'm always jumping around. The main thing is just to continue studying, continue to accumulate information, and not even just to accumulate information, accumulate the right information and learn how to symbolize it, right? The tree of life helps. The tree of life is like 10 symbol boxes. Collect all the information, all the symbols that you would on a normal basis, and put them in their appropriate place. Because honestly, doing this Kabbalah stuff, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop when you're at work. It doesn't stop when you're at school. It doesn't stop when you're using the bathroom. It's always on. So you got to train your subconscious mind to place everything in its appropriate symbol box. Once you do that, understanding will naturally spring forth. Because after you've categorized everything in your life as a part of the tree or as an expression of the tree, it'll start to click. That's why she's describing different symbols. That's why I say build your library of correspondences. Give it time, be patient. What are you in a rush for? What are you in a rush for? No reason to be in a rush. Oh, you said how do you learn the names faster? Draw it out yourself, right? Draw a picture of the tree and draw these names. Keep it in front of you somewhere where you always see it. Associate the names with the colors. Chesed, blue. Gibara, red. Look at this image of the tree. Look at the image of the tree and like really see how each Sephirah is connected with each other. Repetition. All right, time to peace out. Time to peace out. Architect Dad MD, if you want some more information about the Elohim Kabbalistically, go back one chapter, chapter 17, Bina. There's a specific part where she mentions about that. That's a 20-page chapter, so I'm already flipping to it. I might not find it. Well, yeah, it's somewhere within that chapter. And one of the big aspects of that is the fact that God is masculine feminine because it must have balance to create. It's not just masculine, it's not just feminine. There it is. So look specifically on verse 35, chapter 18, verse 35. Fuck it. Marriage is not a matter of two halves, but four quarters, uniting in balanced harmony of reciprocal fecundation. Bina and Hakma are balanced by Hod and Netzach. They are goddesses as well as gods for man to worship. Boaz and Yakin are both pillars of the temple, and only when united do they produce stability. A goddesless religion is halfway to atheism. In the word Elohim, we find the true key. Elohim is translated as God in the authorized and revised versions of the Holy Scriptures. It really ought to be translated as God and Goddess, for it is a feminine noun with a masculine plural termination affixed. So, literally, in the Hebrew language, it is God and Goddess. This is an incontrovertible fact in its linguistic aspect, at any rate, and it is to be presumed that the various authors of the books of the Bible knew what they meant and did not use this peculiar and unique form without good reason. And the spirit of the male and female conjoined principles moved upon the faces of the formless, and manifestation took place. If we want equilibrium instead of our present condition of unequal stresses, we must worship the Elohim, not Jehovah. Matt Mystic says, and how do you feel about listening to subliminals at night? And if so, what do you recommend? I think that it works, most definitely. Find something that you're looking to increase in your life and go for it. I've used them in the past. I still use them. I used some just the other day. Hell, if you could make your own, that'd be even better. Kingmaker says, this is hands down the best channel on YouTube. No doubty about it. Boom. Awesome. Awesome. I agree with you. I agree. Now, if only the YouTube overlords recognize that, or maybe they have. Maybe they have. And I'm going through a testing process. Or not. L says, have you done a previous reading in previous years on the Kabbalistic Tarot by Robert Wang? I have read from certain portions of the book, yes, certain chapters. Um, and that's the book that I was holding up images of, and I will throughout this reading. Great book. All right. Jai Jagopala says, light some candles now and get to work with God's grace. Absolutely. Absolutely. Peace, Wayne M. All right, everybody. That wraps it up. Have a great night. Thank you for being here. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. I love you. Peace.